For most people, a flag is just cloth, something they hang on the 4th of July or a decoration to show a little patriotism. For me, though, my flag was my life. It had been with me through hell. I carried it in Afghanistan, folded neatly in my rucksack through blistering heat and freezing nights. When shells fell and dust choked the air, I held that flag against my chest, reminding myself what I was fighting for. When brothers didn't make it home, I draped it across their coffins and saluted with tears in my eyes. That same flag had been folded by my father's hands when I first enlisted, pressed into mine with the words, "Never forget what it means." So when I came back home after years of service, planting that flag outside my house wasn't about looks. It was about honor. Every morning at sunrise, I raised it. Every night before darkness fell, I took it down carefully, folded it with precision, and stored it safely. My neighbors saw me do it. Some saluted, some gave me nods of respect. A few even thanked me, but not everyone shared that respect. Karen Williams, the president of our HOA, saw my flag as a problem. She had knocked on my door the first week I moved in, her blonde bob stiff with hairspray, her nails sharp, her smile thin as a blade. "Your flagpole isn't regulation height," she had said, waving a clipboard in my face. "And the bylaws clearly state that permanent decorations must be approved by the HOA board." "It's not a decoration," I told her flatly. "It's my flag. It's my right," her fake smile faltered. "I'm just trying to keep the neighborhood uniform, Mr. Miller." Uniform. That word stung. I knew what uniform really meant, and Karen sure as hell didn't. Over the months, she fined me, wrote angry letters, and even tried to rally other neighbors against me. But most of them respected me too much to join her crusade. I ignored her harassment, thinking she'd eventually back off. I was wrong. That Saturday morning, I stepped outside with my coffee, ready to raise Old Glory like I always did. But my heart stopped when I saw the porch. My flagpole was snapped in two, jagged wood sticking out like broken bone. The bracket that held it was twisted, bent as if someone had kicked it hard. And where my flag should have been waving proudly in the morning breeze, there was nothing but a blackened pile of ash. The acrid smell of burnt cloth still hung in the air. I dropped my mug. It shattered on the concrete, but I barely noticed. My knees hit the porch as I stared at the ashes, my chest tight, my breathing shallow. I reached out with shaking hands, sifting through the remains until my fingers brushed something half buried in the soot. A cheap pink lighter, still warm. For a moment the world went silent. My ears rang with the kind of hollow emptiness I hadn't felt since combat. This wasn't just vandalism. This wasn't just petty HOA nonsense. This was personal. Someone had taken the very symbol of everything I fought for, everything I lost, and burned it to the ground. And in my gut, I already knew who had done it. Karen. She had threatened fines. She had called my flag an eyesore. She had told me loud enough for half the block to hear, "If you don't take it down, I will." I thought it was just talk, but now the ashes on my porch told me she had meant every word. I picked up the lighter, turning it over in my hand, fury flooding through me. My training kicked in before my anger consumed me. I cataloged the evidence: the lighter, the broken pole, the scorch marks on the wood. My eyes scanned the lawn for footprints, tire tracks, anything out of place. I had done this 1,000 times before in far worse conditions. But this was different. This was my home, my flag. My fists clenched so tightly my knuckles turned white. Images flashed in my mind of Karen, smug smile plastered on her face, sipping her overpriced coffee, laughing about what she had done. My blood boiled. I wanted to march over to her house and demand answers. But another voice spoke in the back of my mind, the voice of discipline, the one drilled into me during endless nights of training. Stay calm, stay sharp, don't let anger control you. I straightened slowly, forcing my breathing steady. Rage wouldn't win this. Patience would. Strategy would. Because Karen thought she had power. She thought the HOA was her army. She thought rules and fines made her untouchable. But what she didn't know was that Marines don't bow to HOA bylaws. And I wasn't alone. I stared at the ashes again, the pit in my stomach twisting tighter with every second. In my mind, I saw the faces of my brothers, the ones who never made it home, the ones who bled so that flag could wave freely. I whispered a silent promise to them. They'll pay for this. Neighbors began to peek out from their windows. Some stepped onto their porches, whispering when they saw the destruction. A few shook their heads, their eyes filled with pity. One old man across the street raised his hand in a solemn salute, his lips pressed tight. I returned it with a nod. He knew. He understood. I stood tall, ash still on my hands, and looked down the street at Karen's pristine two-story house with its spotless lawn and gaudy garden gnomes. Curtains twitched. I could feel her eyes on me, watching, waiting for me to explode so she could call the cops and play the victim. Not today. Instead, I turned back to my house, went inside, and grabbed my phone. I snapped photos of everything, recorded a video, and called the police. My voice was calm, controlled, but each word carried the weight of my fury. This isn't vandalism, I told the dispatcher. This is arson, and it was targeted. As I hung up, I looked at the ashes one more time and clenched my jaw. Karen thought she had broken me by burning my flag, but what she had really done was light a fire she couldn't put out. Because Marines don't forget. Marines don't forgive. And when you disrespect the flag, you don't just fight one man. You fight all of us. And Karen was about to learn that lesson the hard way. I called the cops. They arrived, took pictures, and promised an investigation, but I could already see it in their eyes. They didn't want to touch the HOA. Too political, too messy. Karen came strutting down the street as if on cue, sipping her morning coffee, smirking like she had just won a battle. Maybe next time you'll follow the rules, she sneered, her voice dripping with satisfaction. I didn't answer her. I didn't need to, because while the cops might hesitate, the Marines never did. Word spread quickly when I told a few old buddies what happened. One of them, Sergeant Daniels, growled through the phone, "She burned your colors?" Say less. We're coming by nightfall. Trucks began pulling up outside my house. Men and women I served with, Marines who wore scars on their bodies and stories in their eyes, stepped out. Some carried tools, others carried flags. All of them carried a look of determination. "This isn't just your fight," Daniel said, clapping me on the shoulder. "This is ours." The next morning, the neighborhood woke up to the sound of hammers, drills, and shouted cadence. By the time the sun was fully up, my front yard had transformed into a fortress of patriotism. A massive new flagpole stood planted in the center, thicker and taller than any the HOA could dream of tearing down. The largest flag I'd ever owned rippled proudly in the wind. Around it, my Marine brothers and sisters stood at attention, guarding it like it was sacred ground, because to us, it was. Karen stormed out of her house, red-faced and screeching, clipboard in hand. "This is against HOA rules. I'll have you fined. But she stopped when she saw the uniforms. She stopped when she realized she wasn't just facing me anymore. She was facing the United States Marines. One of the Marines stepped forward, eyes locked on her, and said in a voice that carried across the whole block, "Ma'am, burning a veteran's flag isn't an HOA issue. It's a crime, and it's disrespect you will answer for." Karen's smirk vanished. The cops arrived again, but this time they weren't looking at me. They were looking at her. The evidence bag with her lighter was enough, and as she was led away in handcuffs, neighbors clapped quietly from their porches. Some even saluted the flag as it waved. I looked up at it, my chest swelling with pride. Karen thought she could take away my honor with fire. She didn't know that fire only forges Marines stronger, and now every time that flag waves, it waves not just for me, but for all of us who will never let it fall.